Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome all of you today to Mathcon Universe and the wonderful world of mathematics. And today our focus will be on strategic problem solving in key concept of percent. So, we are going to focus on solving percent problems using the strategic problem solving approach. So what will be our first step in this strategic problem solving process? Our first step is to decide which approach to use. Which method do we want to use to solve this problem? Let us start with what we call the equation method. The equation method. How does the equation method work? How does it work? Let us see. First, let us note that whenever you see what represents what? A variable. What? How much? How many? If you see this type of phrases or words, they are keywords that represent something very important. So we can use a variable x or y or z to represent the what. So let's call this x. And whenever you see the word is, what does this stand for in a word problem solving situation? In the language of word problem, is will represent equality or equal. What about where you see 25%? What does that represent? Well, we have to note that there is a very important formula when we are dealing with percent problems. For instance, when you have n%, this is defined as n over 100. In this context, n represents a positive number. A positive number. Or, to be specific, a positive integer. N represents a positive integer. Now, so if we use this idea, that means we can say that 25% is what? 25 over 100. And notice, again, in word problem solving situation, the word of represents something we all know about. What is it? It represents multiplication. And then we can now bring that to 60 and express it as a fraction. So what are we doing here? We are actually using what we call the equation method. So the method we are using here is known as what? The equation method. So first thing we do is to again state that we are using equation method before we begin to actually solve the problem. So this is the first thing we want to identify. You can see that this is the path we're headed, but for the sake of record, let us note again that what we're doing here is the equation method. Solving percent problems using equation method. So this is what I'm calling method number one. Method number one. The equation method. So how do we now finish this problem? So what will be our next step? What will be our second step? So notice our first step is to be able you to describe what each of these entities mean in a problem-solving situation. That was our first step. Okay, that was what we call our step number 1. Okay, to state the meaning of each entity in the problem-solving situation. Okay, to what? To state the meaning of each entity in the problem, in a problem-solving situation. Okay, this give a detailed description of each entity. In the problem. So that is our step number 1. That is what we have just executed or implemented. The next thing, of course, is step number 2. What will be our step number 2 here? Our step number 2 is to actually solve this equation problem. To solve for x. So step number 2 in this problem solving process is to what? Solve the equation in terms of x. Solve the equation in terms of x, the variable x. So how do we solve the problem in terms of x? First, we want to know that on the right side of the equation, that we now have a fraction. We now have a fraction. So one thing we can do is what? Do a cross cancellation. Cancel out a 0 and cancel out a 0 here. Cross cancellation. And what else can we do? We can now multiply the 6 by 25. 6 times 25. So what is 6 times 25? What is 6 times 25? Well, 6 times 25 is going to be 150. So 6 times 25, I repeat, is 150. So what will be our next step in this strategic problem-solving process? Our next step is to multiply this 10 by 1. And of course, that will give us 10. And notice that at this point, we can now divide 10 into 150. Or divide 150 by 10. Divide 150 by 10. If we divide 150 by 10, what are we going to obtain? We will certainly obtain the number 15. So that means what? That means that x is going to be equals to 15. In other words, we can rightly say that 15 is 25% of 60. 15 is 25% of 60. So let us go through this step one more time. Step number 1 in this strategic problem-solving process is to give a detailed what? A detailed description of each entity in the problem. What can be what? Written as X is the same thing as equal sign. 25% according to this important formula known as percent formula is what? Stated as n% equals n over 100, where n is some positive integer. So that was why we're able to write this 25% as 25 over 100. And notice that wherever we see the word of in solving percent problem using equation method, we know that of is the same thing as multiplication. And then we wrote the 60 as 60 over 1. Then our step number 2 in this problem solving process is to solve the equation in terms of X. So the right side, of course, of the equation happens to be what? A fractional problem. A fractional multiplication problem. And of course, we carried out the necessary steps. We cancel out the 0 here and with this 0 here. And when we did that, we were able to do the next thing. To multiply the 25 by 6, and we obtained 150. And notice, the next thing we did was to multiply 10 by 1 and obtained 10. And then we went on further to divide the 150 by 10 and obtain the number 15. So therefore, in this problem-solving situation, X equals to 15. What would then be our next step? Our next step or goal is to be able to solve this same problem using another method. What is this method called? Let us see. Before we say anything about this method, let us write out the same problem again. Let us write this problem out again. What is 25% of 60? What is 25% of 60? We are going to call this method number 2. So what is method number 2 called? It is called proportion method. Our method number 2 is called proportion method. That is our method number 2. So what will be our first step in this strategic problem-solving process using method number 2? Well, one of the main things to note is that the word of is going to be very critical in this problem-solving situation. The word of. The other thing we want to do is to establish our game plan for this problem-solving process. Our main goal plan is to use a framework, simple framework of what? Top 1 over what? Base equal to top 2 over what? Base 2. That is going to be our strategy. Top 1 over base 1 equal what? Top 2 over base 2. In this strategy, we are going to identify the top 1 number and the base 1 number, the top 2 number and the base 2 number, and then take the necessary step after we have done that. So what are the numbers that will represent the top 1, base 1, and top 2, base 2? What are the candidates? They are here already indeed. Notice the what again here is still going to be connected to the variable x. And notice, using this definition of n%, the 25% we noted again is still going to be what? 25 over 100. Based on the definition of n%. So 25% again is still 25 over 100. Again, 25% is still what? 25 over 100. So on the left side, I am perfectly free to what? Write my top 1 number as what? 25. My base 1 number now becomes what? 100. Notice I made a statement just a few minutes ago, less than 2 minutes ago, that we are going to watch something about the word of. We need to watch out for something. We need to watch out for something. We're going to note that any word or any entity that comes after the word of, any entity that comes after the word of, in this case the entity is what? 60. Must be a base. So that means that our base, our right base, is going to be 60. So what then will be above the 60 in this problem-solving setup? Of course, it is clear that x will be that candidate. X will be the candidate. So what will be our next step in this strategic problem-solving process? Our next step is to use a method. A method. What will be that method? What will be that method? It is known as the method of cross multiplication. Method. Strategy. Step. So we're calling our step here what? Cross multiplication step. Or we're executing the cross multiplication method in this step. So this will be our step number 2 for this problem solving. Use cross multiplication. As the problem solving tool. Problem solving, PS, tool. So we are using the cross multiplication approach here for the problem solving tool. Notice our first step is to implement this framework of top 1, base 1 equals top 2, base 2. Okay, step number 1. Implement the problem-solving framework. So at this point, let us implement now the cross multiplication approach. How does it work? Well, we are going to say what? 25 times 60 must equals what? 100 times x. I repeat, we're going to write 25 times 60 equals 100 times x. So what is 25 times 60? Well, 25 times 60 is going to be what? 1,500. 1,500. So we are going to write 1,500. So 1,500 equals 100x. So how can we get the value for x in this equation? Well, to get a value for x, we need to divide both sides by 100. Divide both sides of the equation by 100. Both sides of the equation by 100. And if we do so, notice, we can cancel out this 0, 100, we're going to 100 one time, 100 to 100 one time. And then 100 go into 1,500 what? Take 1,500, divide by 100, what do we obtain? We're going to obtain, of course, 15. So that means that what? X equals to 15. X equals to 15. Or 15 equals to X. Or what? 15 equal to X. Or 15 equals to X, or what? X equals 15 rather. X equals to 15. So notice the strategy again, all the steps, implementation of strategy. Step number 1, implement the problem-solving framework by carrying out this problem-solving scheme of top 1 over base 1 equals top 2 over base 2. And then, of course, note that the left part of the problem will involve what? 25 over 100, and the right side will be what? X over 60, based on the implementation of this approach. Because whatever comes after the word of must be a base. And of course, 60 happened to be that base. And then finally, what did we do? We use cross multiplication. Cross multiply what? Cation. Let's make sure that this is 100% correct. Cross what? Multiplication. Multiplication. Make sure that our spelling is 100% correct in this situation. Step number 2, we use what? Cross multiplication as the problem-solving tool, which involves what? Multiplying the what? 25 rather by 60, which involves what? Multiplying 25 by 60. I repeat, the cross multiplication involves what? Multiplying 25 by 60, and we're able to obtain what? 1,500. And then we multiply the 100 by x, and obtain 100x. Finally, we have to divide both sides by 100, and we're able to obtain 15 equals to x. And I hope that you have been able to learn some lessons on how to solve a percent problem by what? Equation method and proportion method. I hope that also that you will continue to practice this type of problem more and more. And the more you do so, the more you will continue to increase your problem-solving skills, your problem-solving confidence, and most importantly, you will be building a strong knowledge base. Until next time, thank you once again for joining us today in Mathcon Universe and the wonderful world of mathematics.